guys, it's time for some quadratic equations. So first thing you need to know about quadratic equations is what is one. So all a quadratic is something which has a certain amount of x squareds. So as you can see, that's 2x squared, or plus 2x squared to be more specific. Over here, some x's and a number, and which is usually equal to 0. You'll see in a second that if it's not equal to 0, we'll make it equal to 0. But that first things first, it's just a quadratic. This is a quadratic equation. So you've got some x squareds, you've got some x's, and you've got some numbers. That's it. So let's create another one. X squared. That means there's one x squared. Plus 5x plus 4 equal to 0. Okay, so that's all a quadratic is. You'll see it sometimes written like this. All these A, B, and C saying is it's a number. So they're saying some certain amount of x squareds. A lot of the time it will just be 1. So it will just look like this. They're not going to write 1x squared for you. Then you're going to have some x's and then a number equal to 0. So that's all a quadratic is. So now, in a second, I'm just going to give you, so this video is just to give you a few rules. Because there are 3 ways of solving quadratics. So for example, if I give you something like this. Yeah, there are 3 ways of solving this, figuring out what that x is. And some of you might know this. One's by factorization, so you can factorize quadratics. You can do the quadratic formula. And again, if you don't know this, don't worry. That's the whole point. I'm going to go over this. I'm sure some of you have actually heard of it. And the other one is completing the square. And what I'm going to show you is 3 important things you need to know about when you're given, a question like this. The first thing is, the equation should always be equal to 0. So do you see how this one, so even before you start trying to work it out, make sure it's equal to 0. So now I'd probably say 90% of questions will give you the question when it's equal to 0. But every now and again, you might get a question like this. Now, the mistake here would be to try and work this out straight away. That's wrong. So here, I'll tell you, you'll learn as we go through these videos why you want it equal to 0, but for the time being, until I explain it to you, just remember this. If it's not equal to 0, make it equal to 0. How do you make it equal to 0? Incredibly simple. So first things first, hopefully you get that this is equal to that, and whenever you see an equal sign, you're dealing with scales. So look, you've got x squared minus 3x plus 5 equals 3. And look, you want this equal to 0, and you've got 3 on this side. Well, guess what? Take away 3 from that side, well, on both sides. Remember, you've got to do the same to each side. And hopefully you see, that just means we're taking 3 off this as well. So, okay, and then you solve this. So what you'll notice is we're at first glance, this question and this question look different. Once you tuck 3 away from this, each side, they were both the same. So look out for that. Yeah. So before I go onto the next point, why A should never be equal to 0, and I'll talk about what A is and everything. Let's just let's just make sure you understand what's, what these kind of questions mean. And it's exactly the same as what all of the algebra you've been trying to solve has meant so far. You're just trying to find out the number, which if you square it, take away 3 lots of it, and add 2, you end up getting 0. So for example, let me show you why x equals 5 isn't the answer to this. So look, if we do 5 squared minus 3 lots of 5 plus 2, then look, 5 squared is 25, 3 times 5 is 15, if we add 2, so let's do this. 25 minus 15 is going to leave you with 10, then if you add 2, you're going to get 12 on this side. So that's rubbish. That's why it's not equal. So 5 wouldn't be an answer here. So let me show you a number which would be an answer. I've knocked a little bit of that off. So a number that would be an answer is 2. So let's put that in. 2 squared minus 3 times 2 plus 2 equals 0. So that would be 4 minus 6 plus 2. Hopefully you can see 4 minus 6 is minus 2. Then if you add 2, you're going to literally get 0. So here you go. That's one of the answers to that. Obviously, we need to, I don't expect you to know just yet how, how you'd find out that 2 is, but just understand that, look, this is like any of those other questions we've been doing. And you're just trying to find out the number. They give you something. They give you a little bit of information about this hidden number and how, if you square it, take away 3 lots of it, add 2, the whole thing equals 0. But, so this whole, learning how to solve quadratic equations is to actually find out how you find out the answer is x equals 2. So now, let me tell you another interesting thing about quadratics. So we know that x equals 2 solves this. Now, you might be like, okay, so the answer is x equals 2, but every quadratic actually has, well, most quadratics have 2 equations. Most have 2. Now, have a look at this. Let's stick an x equals 1 into this. So we're going to have 1 squared minus 3 times 1 plus 1. Now think what that is. 1 squared is 1 minus, I meant 2 here by the way, yeah? Minus 3 plus 2. So 1 minus 3 is minus 2. Add 2 equals 0 as well. So what's going on? We've got 2 things. Yeah. So quadratics are really the first equation you're going to come across, and I think the only equation in GCSE which has 2 equations, right? 2 answers. So keep an eye out for that as well. Okay, but here's the other thing. So if we look at this next one, I've written that a should never be negative in an equation, and if you look over here, all I mean by a is the number in front of x squared should never be negative. So what I'm saying is, say like you found yourself in this situation, and don't worry how you got into that situation just yet, but just think about this. Okay? Don't ever don't try to solve this either. So what would you do if you're stuck in this? Simple. Remember. And here, it's just you've got to remember this. But it will make sense to you as well. So if you're ever in that situation, here's what you do. Times each side by minus 1. Now by timesing by minus 1, what you're going to do is this. You're going to take this whole side, and you're going to times it by minus 1. And obviously you times 0 by minus 1 as well, but that's going to equal 0. So look, minus 1 times minus 2x squared, that gives you plus 2x squared. Minus 1 times plus 5x, that gives you minus 5x. And minus 1 times minus 3 gives you plus 3. So really, just switch the signs. Just switch the signs of everything. So for example, try this. If you ever got to this stage, okay, times both sides by minus 1. Here's what you're going to get. So obviously that's a minus, so that becomes a plus now. So you don't even need to write that. Minus 6x minus 2 equals 0. So it's the exact same thing. So yeah, your number in front, when you're solving it, should never ever be 0. What am I talking about 0? I'm talking about it should not be negative. If it is, just change it. Swap all the signs. Alright. So next point as well. Yeah, this is a good one as well. So look, you don't know how to solve them yet, but if you ever run into a situation where the number in front of your x squared, the number in front of your x, and that little number at the end, they have a common factor. So something like this. Imagine you kind of find yourself trying to solve something like this. Yeah, so if you do that, then watch this. Do you see, can you see I can write this side as 2x squared plus 2x plus 3 equals 0. So, can you see? Here's what I've got. So all you do, if there's a number which is common to all of them, divide it by that number. Okay, so just divide through, and all that's going to do is knock that off. So yeah, if you divide that by 2, you see that's 2 times 1. Yeah, you're just left with this. Okay, so just here's another one. So if you ever saw this, yeah, don't bother solving that. Divide both sides by 3, and you'll get to this. Okay, and hopefully you can understand why. It's because this can factorize with a 3 on the outside, and then if you divide both sides by 3, you'll get rid of that, and you'll just be left with what's inside the bracket. So yeah, I mean, look, so now I've shown you to make sure that you're going about the right one. I guess the most important one out of all of these is this one. Always make sure your equation's equal to 0. And then once you've got an equation like this, say, yeah, now the next videos will show you actually how you work out what the answer to this is. And remember, you're going to have 3 options. You can either factorize, you can either solve by factorization. Don't worry if you don't know what any of these mean yet. You can sort of find out the x's which work for this by doing the quadratic formula, or you can do a thing called completing the square. So okay, so watch the next video. I think we'll start off with the quadratic formula. Does that sound fun or what? Alright, see you in a sec.